Welcome back to another episode of UAP Studies. I'm Jason, and joining us again is Louis Borges. How you doing, Louis?
I'm doing really good, brother. Thanks for having me again, and super excited about our guest. He's a proudly Canadian guest. Got a big resume of things he's involved with, all very noble and positive things. And he's a really good source of information, especially being a member of Mufon. So yeah, I'll toss it back to you. Let's intro our guest and let's get right into it.
Perfect. Jason has been somebody that I've become friends with, but long distance. And not supposedly, he helped me initially when I first joined MUFON. He's trained me. He's my source whenever I get stuck on anything. And as of late, I've been really behind on my investigations with MUFON. I've been really bad at that. So I need to get my butt back in shape. But Jason was also one of my first guests on the podcast. And when I asked him, I got a podcast, would you be on it, sir? He's like, absolutely. That's how I felt when I first started, just this puny little dude trying to do a podcast. And Jason was gracious enough to come on and be one of my first guests. And he's come on since a few times. I think this is your third time, Jason, on the podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, Jason, one of the things that I always get into with any investigators, and this is for the people that haven't heard your other episodes yet, but what got you initially interested in the topic of UFOs, UAPs? What initiated that for you?
It all started with a book I found in the library at school when I was a kid. There was a book on the shelf. I was really into mysterious things like that magic of, is Bigfoot real, and the Loch Ness Monster or the Bermuda Triangle, things like that really captured my imagination. And it was like public school. I can't remember exactly what grade I was in. I think I was like grade 3, maybe grade 2, maybe even grade 4. I'm not 100% sure, but I was right young. And there was a section in our school library and had all these different types of books, and one was about UFOs, and I picked that up, and it's become a lifelong obsession ever since, really. You could say I haven't put the book down since then.
And what was it about the book specifically that triggered it for you, that sort of cemented it for you?
It was the thought that there's other life out there, because when you're little, you have a really overactive imagination, and something like that, it was in a book, so it seemed like it had to be real. So it was maybe it was like the stamp of approval, like that this is real. So it just catapulted through that, and I just became, you could say, obsessed with it afterwards, trying to find if I could figure out if it was real or not.
Nice.
And how did that lead into you're getting interested in MUFON and eventually becoming a member and now like chief, investigator for MUFON? How did you transition from one to the other?
So I was doing my own investigations. I would take out the library books and I would contact other libraries asking if they had newspapers from that area. And this was before the internet was a thing in people's homes. So it was a very tedious process, and my mom would help me. And it was just a matter of reaching out to these places to try to get information. And I would keep all these little clippings. I would get an envelope from someplace, and it would have whatever information they had or a photocopy of a page or something. And I just kept doing that. I just kept it sort of like a hobby as a child. And as I got older, that's when the internet became a thing, and I was able to start looking into things for myself. And I was doing my own full-on investigations just over the internet with the tools that we had then. And it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I actually got a hold of MUFON. I did so because I figured I'd have a more steady stream of access to these types of cases, and I'd be able to come up with a better conclusion. I would have more tools at my disposal to use to find the secrets. So I thought.
But I have any crazy, interesting stories, like things that would just, we all heard like the famous abduction cases and things like that most people are aware of, but being in a regional part of the world, right? You're in Canada, so it's MUFON specifically here. Like, I bet you know, a lot of our Canadian listeners have no clue about half the stuff that's gone down in our own country. So, do you have anything that comes to mind in that regard?
Well, there's so many. There's so many. Like, it's not Canadian specific, but I remember the first time I read Project Serpo and thinking like, is this real? And then all the conspiracy talk, like, oh, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind was based off of this, and it just, your imagination runs wild. You have to learn how to dig through all of that kind of muck in this field and
Yeah, for sure.
decipher what's actually science fiction compared to what could be science fact. But as for cases that like captivated me, you could actually find most of them on the Government of Canada's website. They have a good selection on there that you could review, and you know, they've been looked into by the RCMP
Yeah.
and other investigation outlets across the country. So you know that they've done some work looking into these, and if they still weren't able to come up with a conclusion, then you know it gives you what's that?
I printed off the all the Canadian UFOs and stuff like that documentation that they released, and I put it all in the books just to they actually have some really good information there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my favorite has to be Clan Lake Northwestern Territories. It was I can't remember the exact date now, but these two this prospector was out at the lake and an object touched down, but it hit the water and it did like this big spinning effect, and there was spokes coming off of it. And he tried to go to where the object crashed, but he couldn't find anything in there. And then he told somebody, and then this big investigation came about of it. And you fast forward half a century to now, and one of my friends, Mikey McBrien, he was part of that show Ice Pilots. Well, he has his own plane, and he actually went and flew out there. He got a hold of me asking if I knew the exact crash landing area. So I didn't know the exact area, but he went out, he went and scouted, he touched down, he went camping there and did a drone survey of the area and got all these pretty cool pictures. And we were supposed to go up together, me and him, to go onto the site, but then COVID hit and everything had to take a back burner.
Nice. And this was fairly recent then?
That me and him were going to go up there?
Yeah.
Or that this, this was fairly recent, like within the last 2 years.
Okay.
We were supposed to go up there. But yeah, this sighting actually took place, like, I want to say the late 50s. I'm not entirely sure. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, because Canada's had some pretty good cases as well. I mean, a lot of us fixate on what took place in the States, because the States, let's face it, has had a lot of activity. And if they're trying to keep it secret, they're doing a horrible job at it, because you know all that information is out there. But Canada, you know, the Falcon Lake incident is pretty big. That was kind of like our, you know, Roswell of Canada, pretty much case, right? And then the one was it Shag Harbor? Nova Scotia. That one was witnessed by, you know, hundreds of people. So we've had, you know, our own cases in Canada that rival some of what took place in the States. And still till today, we still have NORAD and stuff like that trace UAPs coming from the north, you know, from Alaska, traveling all the way down to the States. So, you know, they cross Canada. Canada's a very active place. So
yeah, there's even one in the new 2021 Canadian UFO survey that exact trajectory from Alaska towards Minnesota, that it was reported by a pilot.
Right. No, the other question that I wanted to sort of look at as well is the Canadian UFO Survey 2021, which you just told me about yesterday, got released. So anything juicy about this survey?
Well, there was, I think, 700. I got it right here. Let me just dig into this here. I think it's 722 cases reported all across Canada for last year. And that's a big undertaking itself, having to collect that information, because there's all these little satellite groups across the country that maybe not necessarily that they don't post exactly the report. They just give like a quick synopsis of what took place, or there's people that post something on Facebook and a guy's hobby as collecting UFO reports takes the report. So trying to go across and contact all these different research organizations across the country is a huge undertaking in itself.
Right.
And having to compile all that data as well is another big undertaking. But for what was reported to these agencies, there was 722 cases that were reported, and the survey is actually saying that is a 42% decrease from the year before, and that the number of UFO sightings reported in Canada for 2021 is the lowest since 2003, so 20 years ago almost.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Sorry, Jay. I was going to say there's been a major drop then from 2020, because when we first had the COVID, there was a lot more reports. I guess people were at home more, outside more, and then it totally dropped. Is that relevant at all?
Absolutely, 100%. It was also a lot to do with Starlink. With our reports to Mufon, I'm going to say within the first year, but like 2020 to 2021, I'm going to say close to 40% of our reports came in as Starlink. Which
crazy.
Is huge.
Yeah. That's been even on the Mufon site, we have it right there when you first go on. Pictures of how the satellites look like, and if you've seen this, you don't need to make a report. We know what it is. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen them for myself yet. I've
really.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I used to do night watches. I haven't done a night watch in like a year and a half, but I was hoping to see them, but I've never have.
Is it a collection of satellites or just one?
Yeah, up to 40.
40.
Yeah.
All in a row.
So is it like a sparkling belt just ripping through the sky kind of thing?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pissing off a lot of astronomers though, because it's ruining their view of the night sky, right?
Or your time lapse that you've got 8 hours into,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then you've got a streak.
Yeah, my buddy used to do time lapses, and like if I even as much as closed the door in the house, he said it would do something to the image, and it wouldn't be like you literally had to set it and then like leave the house and don't open a window, don't close the door, no movement whatsoever if you want to have that proper long exposure, right? So
wow.
Yeah, I could bet it would piss those guys off for sure, because he was a bit of a nut with that. So,
and not to mention, these satellites aren't following all the same trajectory. So there's times they'll crisscross, and it'll make it look like something is exploding in the sky slowly, but you got 4 objects descending from a center point, all taking off in its own direction. So it really tricks people's minds at the same time as to what they're seeing, especially if there's cloud cover and you're just seeing this object popping in and out. Then all of a sudden there's another one beside it. It really trips people out.
Do you have like any advice for people that want to start doing night watches on not getting tricked by satellites? Because that's the one thing that people get tricked on. Do you have any advice or tips to kind of know when you're looking at one?
Yeah, anybody that's doing a night watch or even just observing the night sky and they want to be more familiar, download Stellarium. It's a free app. You can put it on your phone, your iPad, whatever. And it's in real time. You just point it at whatever you're seeing and it tells you what it is.
Yeah. I've used the app myself and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. And sometimes, there's satellites that aren't named on there. So they could be like secret USA satellites or Russian even, who knows? But yeah, they're supposed to be disguised or whatnot, but so it won't come up with a name, but it's still a satellite. You can still tell it's a satellite.
Right.
I guess another thing too is satellites don't, go directly left, straight up. straight to the right again. And then like they don't make 90-degree turns. They don't stop on a dime and go the opposite direction. They have a trajectory. It's just, whatever the
That's
speed
right.
is, it's consistent. It's not,
That's right.
they're not going to go fast and stop and then drop down and then rip out again. Right. So
No, exactly. The only
erratic
time that you're,
movement's a giveaway.
yeah, the only time that you're going to see a trajectory change is pretty much with Starlink when after they deploy, there's like the string of like up to 40 of them. And once they start breaking out from that string, they're heading off to their final orbit. So you might see some slowly breaking off from the chain or whatnot, but it'll be very slow.
Right. So as far as the Canadian survey is concerned, we've had a major drop then last year in sightings. Out of the 700, has there been really good cases, or is this basically just everything from afar?
Well, we have some really credible witness reports from pilots,
Okay.
which are always interesting cases, because it comes down to the whole Tic Tac sighting. You got a trained observer reporting this.
Right.
And he has real-time access to the air traffic control to confirm if they can see anything as well. And when they tell you, yeah, no, we're not seeing anything, then that there's something to take a little bit of a look at.
Right. And you mentioned there was a case here in Langley, I think 2 years ago, where a pilot had seen something in the sky as well, reported it to the tower. Tower said they didn't see anything on it, but it was quite close in proximity to this pilot. And I forgot if it was an orb of some kind that he saw, but I remember that being a big case here in BC, and I wanted to look into it. I didn't. I've been lazy on my investigation. So if you think that I'm active, I am not. I haven't been for a little bit. So bad on me, shame on me. But I'm still interested in local cases for sure.
Yeah,
I had one last October, actually. I didn't even know what the hell was going on. I sent Jason the pictures. Like, is this legit? Like, we have a windstorm right now. I can barely hold my phone. Planes are grounded, and there's an orange orb that stayed in the same spot for 45 minutes. He used all the apps and checked for air traffic. And so, we've got pictures and video. And this was last October out in the Fraser Valley in British Columbia. So,
oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which actually leads me to a question for you, Jay, because you are a drone expert pretty much at this point.
Yep.
That's what you do. You work with drones, you work at the mines, you do surveying, if I'm not mistaken, of the land. So something that because I really get pissed off when people say that it's a drone, because in the conditions that Louis talking about, because we live close to each other, it was so windy that night. There was no way that planes could
I could
fly
barely
much.
hold my phone. Like, to get a still image was really, really tough. And
Yeah.
I was using like street lights in the city down below. I live on top of a mountain, so my view is a couple hundred kilometers from end to end. Like, I can see well into the US and about 4 different cities on the border part of Canada here. And yeah, like, it didn't move. I was using lights down below as a reference point, and it wasn't directly above. It was like wouldn't be 12 o'clock. It would be like 11:55. It was just slightly askew to the left of the lower light, and I kept using that as the reference, and it didn't move at all. And I mean, even helicopters don't stay in the same spot for 45 minutes. They're going to search, and there's no pulsing lights. And I got some up close footage. I use night filters on my phone. Some pictures, it just looks like a plasma. It seems to have a different aspect every photo. And when you use the night vision filters, it looked like Saturn. It looked like a round orb with like a hazy energy around it and like clearly defined. It looked like a flying saucer in the sky.
Wow.
So it's pretty nuts.
I would like to see those, Jason.
Yeah,
You guys gotta send those
I'll
over
hook
to
you
me.
up for sure. I
Yeah.
didn't know what it was. My wife is she gets scared of the UFO phenomena. She thinks they are, if they do come, that we're all screwed. So she didn't like it. And I made a fleeting remark, hey honey, looks like a UFO. Because I'm always looking, and Jason's always telling me, you live in a hot spot, keep your eyes out. And sure enough, 20 minutes later, it's still there. And I thought, that's bizarre. Like, what plane? And so I called Jason Gilmet, and I'm like, buddy, I'm not crazy right now, but I think there's something going on. So he's like, take video, take pictures, like, get off the phone with me. I'm going to see if there's any other air traffic, right? We ruled out all the obvious suspects right off the bat. And I mean, you're the expert, Jay. What do you think, man? Is that a UAP or what?
Fuck if I know.
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you this. A good app to use is called windy.com. It'll tell you your wind speeds, and that'll give you a good gauge to tell if a drone can be in the air. Because on that app, you have the ability to check not only the surface wind, but at elevations as well. You could check up to 20,000 feet or up where the planes are flying. You could check what the wind speed is up there.
Wow.
So if it's screaming wind down here, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's screaming wind up there, you know? So that's something to always take a look into. But as far as it being a drone, so the capabilities right now, I have one drone that can stay in the sky for close to 2 hours. That's a fixed wing drone. It can't hover. It's always got to move. So it's basically just using wind current to stay afloat.
Yeah.
That is like industrial level of technology. For consumer level technology, the best that we were seeing was probably around 25 minutes for what's called a DJI Phantom. And they can handle winds, it says up to 70 kilometers per hour. Well, I've flown in 70 kilometers per hour and that drone wasn't moving. So I had to take it straight back down again in order to get below the wind and bring it back to me. So I'd say up to 45, 50 pushing it, the drone can stay relatively still in about 50 kilometer at winds for a normal size consumer drone. Now I have a really big drone. It's called a Matrice 300. It could stay in the air for up to an hour. And it can also combat winds up to about 70, maybe 80 kilometers per hour. And it has an internal GPS that will hold it basically stationary like a statue pretty much. The wind, like it's going to be fighting, so you're going to be able to see, if you're physically looking at the drone, you're going to be able to see it leaning towards, but it's basically going to be staying right where you left it in the sky. In order for a drone to do that, it takes a lot of battery power to be fighting these winds to hold itself stationary.
Right.
So if a drone has about an hour battery life and it's screaming wind outside and it's fighting the wind, you can count that to be about half that battery life after. You know, it's not going to be able to stay up there the whole time.
Well, we timed it as well. I think.
First of all, it was probably 25 kilometers away from where I was, right? It wasn't right in front of me. And the size of it, light emission wise, it would have to be the size of like, I don't know, it's probably 30, 40 feet. Because I mean, I had houses and streetlights down below as a reference point, and it was probably, you know, if a street light was a pinprick, it was probably 40 pinpricks, you know, so it was substantial enough that the luminosity went that far. You know, I think if it was even because there was a helicopter that Jason tracked, and I could see it as he was tracking it, and you could see the flashing light, this tiny, tiny flashing light compared to this orange. So even as far as what it was giving out in terms of lumens, it was quite bright. So,
and that's another thing I was going to say. Most drones don't have, like standard consumer grade drones don't have high powered lights on it
because it kills the battery.
Yeah, that, or it adds weight to the drone as well.
Right, and good point.
And I have these third party lights. They're called Lume Cubes, and you can control them from the ground from an app. So you can have them as strobing, or you can increase the luminosity all the way up to 3,000 lumen. So I have two of those, which equals 6,000 lumen. This thing looks like, I don't know, like a spotlight coming down on you. But even with light, you know, it washes out over a significant distance. I'm not entirely sure what a landing light for a plane would be, but it's going to be significantly higher than 6,000 lumen, you know? So to be able to see it that far of a distance is that's a lot of output. That's a lot of energy being pushed out from that bulb if it's a light bulb.
Yeah, and the way that it was just fixated in the sky with the windy conditions that we had, if it was a plane, that plane would have shifted, and I mean, we timed it. It was a good
Yeah, it's
45 minutes.
And there's
Yeah.
no strobing either. It's just a fixed orange light. Didn't move. It was just a big enough orange light where you look at it and you're like, that doesn't look right, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
it doesn't belong there. Yeah.
didn't do anything. And then finally at the very end, what capped it for me was it started to move ever so slightly and then just very slowly blinked out. It wasn't like a fast, like a light switch. It was just like okay, good night. And then it just slowly disappeared and stayed relatively in that same space. But that the only time it ever deviated off of that spot was at the end when it just seemed to go and
South.
just-
They seemed to be heading south at that point and
That's
just
right,
phasing out of your eyesight. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
It
Yeah.
never lost intensity. Like it's not like it was getting smaller. It just literally like, when you're in a room with a bright light and you shut it off or an incandescent bulb, you could still see a bit of the filament for
Yeah.
half a second after. It was just like that. It was like, okay, time to go now. And you could
Wow.
just see it extinguish like a candle, right? It wasn't like a light switch, like bang, instant. It had a gradient. It had a half a second of, it just seemed very peaceful. That's the only way I could say it. Like, it just seemed like it was nice. It had a nice way of disappearing.
Wow.
I thought
Wow.
it was super cool.
Sometimes, because I live right by Lake Superior, the harbor here, and all the flights coming from Toronto area up towards Thunder Bay, they fly over the lake and I could see them from where I live. And I can track planes as far as 80 kilometers out visibly by seeing their front light
Yeah.
on it. And it looks like that. It's just a stationary light in the sky from such a far distance. It looks like it's hovering,
Yeah.
but really it's coming towards us
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
But staying on that elevation that it doesn't look to be moving. It could be mistaken as a very bright star. And then once it gets closer to the harbor, that's when it starts to drift out to the side and you can visibly see that the light is moving. And then once it makes that full turn, then you can see its navigation lights blinking.
Yeah.
So you weren't able to see any navigation lights
No,
coming off this
There was
thing,
no
eh?
strobing. There was no lights. Again, Jason checked air traffic. Nothing. And then as we were on the phone, he goes, "Hey, there is a helicopter going through that plane right now." And I could see it. I'm like, yeah, I could see it's directly to the south. It's over Abbotsford, heading towards Aldergrove, that type of thing. And yeah, I could track the air traffic, but it was nowhere near where this thing was. So, and it wasn't very high. Like I would say, if I had to guess, maybe 1,000 feet. It wasn't like I'm looking straight up in the air. I was looking out my view and it was over in that kind of 2 o'clock position from me. And, first I saw it, thought nothing of it, saw it 20 minutes later, commented to my wife, then started filming, taking pictures, and it was there another 25 minutes or so. And then it just very slowly disappeared,
Wow.
blinked out.
Yeah, I definitely want to take a look at that.
Yeah. And like
Yeah.
I said, I've got stills of it with filters, without filters. And then every single picture seems to have a different image, and the ones that are unfiltered, it just looks like a white plasma with like greenish orange color gradient around it. And every image, that gradient's a little different. And it's like almost like a ball of energy just shifting every single time you get a still. It looks a little different because it's never been static, right?
See,
That
yeah.
Oh, did we lose Jason?
Oh, am I frozen?
No, you're good.
I'm good.
Our guest is
Our guest is frozen.
frozen.
how about now?
You're good
Now you're
now.
back. Yeah, now
You're
you're back.
Okay.
Mhm.
But yeah, what was I saying there? When you're looking at, say, a bright object like Venus, and you're looking at it through your camera, you'll still see that distortion field. It looks like it's a ball spinning in there.
Yeah.
But what it really is just it's due to the aperture of your camera. So when people say it looked like a plasma ball rotating around and whatnot, a good explanation half the time is it's just because of the aperture on your
Could be.
camera.
Yep,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And Jay, we had a case once that I don't know if you remember this one. This took place about 2 years ago, but we had a case where somebody in Alberta was going for a walk and they saw a light near the water, and it freaked them out. And then as they walked back, they saw another light in the sky pass over them, and another light sort of like crisscrossing, and they were worried that they might be UFOs. And I thought, oh, that's a curious case. But when I asked you, because this took place a while back, I asked you, can you look on, I think it was Flight Radar, at this specific date over the specific lake, and you found out it was a one of those planes that lands, grabs water, and then flies back out. One of those firefighter planes.
Yeah.
That's what they saw. And then when they walked back, I figured out on Stellarium that what they saw was the International Space Station flying, reflecting the sun. So it looked huge to them. It looked like this thing in the sky that just passed them by. And there was a commercial airline a little bit further away. So, but just the perfect timing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that just goes to show you that sometimes these experiences have a logical explanation. But in this case, they just happened to see two things that, you know, in close proximity to each other that gave the illusion that there was something flying over the lake that day, right?
Yeah. And that happens like a lot, actually. It happens quite often when there's these series of coincidences take place, and they happen at the same time in the same area.
Yeah. Just perfect combination to give that illusion, for sure, right?
That's right. But then when you write it out, it looks like it's somebody's trying to give off some bullshit explanation to it. It's swamp gas.
Yeah, exactly. I always feel like that when I would write to the person like, hey, this is what you saw, whatever. I always felt like, oh man, they think I'm just pulling a Hynek on them right now.
You work for the government. You're just trying to downplay my experience.
Exactly. I totally disagree with what you say is the conclusion to this investigation, but yeah. Have you had that, Jay? Have you had people like totally bounce back on you?
I've gotten hate mail. I've been told I've been a paid government shill. I've been called a lot of things because, as you know, it takes a lot to impress me. And it's mainly because I've been in this field for so long, and I've seen how a lot of, like 99% of these cases usually play out as something explainable under these different types of circumstances, which make it seem extraordinary at the time. And I've seen that happen so many times that I can usually piece it together pretty fast what they saw. And when I try to explain that to them, they get very upset. There's a lot of people that need to believe that everything in the night sky, every airplane, every satellite is a UFO for some reason. It gives them comfort. So I'm not no one to take that comfort away from anybody. I'm just there to give you the scientific facts.
That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I want to talk about is if somebody wanted to become a UFO investigator, let's say they want to get off the couch and they want to become active with Mufon, what are the steps for that? What do they need to do?
Stop watching these YouTube videos that show all these UFO videos, these compilation of UFO videos of something like there's a bunch of UFO channels out there. I'm not going to name them, but they're majority of hoax pushers.
Right.
Stop watching those and come into it with an open mind, but realize that the phenomenon is more rare than it is open, if that makes sense. Like, you're going to see for every UFO case that you investigate, 100 of them are absolutely explainable. And there's that one that can teeter on, well, maybe it could have been this or it could have been that, but we got no explanation for it right now. So if you have a mind like that and you're willing to accept that not everything in the sky is a UFO, then absolutely we want you to come take a look into Mufon. And you can do that by going onto the website and become a member. From there, you're going to fill out a quick questionnaire kind of a thing, and then you're going to be sent a test to do. And test is going to have, I'm not sure if it's 100 questions I can't remember what it is.
I think it's 100 questions, and you got to get 70% or better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our goal, we want people to be able to have a higher percentile correct in those. So take a look at the resource material that's provided through Mufon, and just come into it knowing that your entire perception of the phenomenon could be shifted once you start looking into these cases. Like, there was a time that I didn't see anything unexplainable for probably 6 months, and it gets really jading after that because you're just seeing the same old thing over and over again. It's okay, well, they saw a meteor, this person saw an airplane, this person saw Starlink, and these other 50 people saw Starlink. But when you get that one case that's unexplainable, that's what brings it back. It sparks that magic for you again.
Yeah, I think one of the first cases that I had, and I mentioned this before on the podcast, is one of the very first, I think it's maybe the second case that I had, is a 2-second clip. It's just 2 seconds because this kid had a horseshoe up his butt because he captured this within 2 seconds before his phone takes a picture. It records for 2 seconds. In that 2 seconds, you see an object about the size of a Ford pickup truck emerge quickly out of the Fraser River and into the sky. And I think David Palachuk calculated it something like 3 point something Mach out of the water, never made a splash or anything like that. And we calculated the size because it was right by a train track with a train carts on it. It's amazing that this is actually in the waters. This phenomenon happens in the water as much as it does in the sky, probably predominantly underwater more than it is in the sky. So I found that to be the case anyways, that there's always water sources or mines near these areas. You work near mines. Have you found that to be the case? Like, have you had any reports from anybody there saying they see something strange?
I got firsthand account of one there.
Oh, please do tell.
It was a summer day, and I think it had to be about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I was headed out to do a tour of one of our tailings impoundments. And as I was coming down the hill, something shiny in the sky caught my eye. And as I go down the hill, it gets blocked out by the slope of one of our dams. So I come around and fully expecting it to be a bird. I come up to the bottom of this other hill, and straight up is this object. It's a metallic object, and it's just sitting there, and it has a cigar shape to it. I get up to the top of the hill, I park my truck, and I happen to have my camera on me as well. I start taking pictures, and I even had enough time to set up the camera on the hood of my truck so I wouldn't be screwing around with it. And I was able to take video of it basically being stabilized because of the hood of my truck, and I just recorded it. And this object just sat there. And I recorded it for about 15 minutes before it suddenly started moving off to the west. It started going off to the west very slowly, and it's clear. Everything is blue from the ground up. The whole sky is blue. And I recorded it, and I don't know how big it was, but I checked flight radar. There was nothing on the flight radar. And out there, it's entirely possible it could be a plane, because not every plane broadcasts what is that? I can't remember the signal name, but yeah, not every plane broadcasts that frequency to be able to be picked up on flight radar. And I still hope it was a UFO though, because I got pictures of it, and it's pure white, and it was enough to stump me anyway. It was that was over our mine site.
Yeah, and you're a trained observer, so that kind of goes to show that even to people in Mufon that sometimes poo-poo on other people's cases because it happens to be explainable can actually have something happen to them that is unexplainable,
That's right.
Yeah, and that only cements the further questioning and all that, and sort of perpetuates our need to keep investigating as well, right? So
that's right. Exactly right.
That's good.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think about, all the current UAP news, like hot topics right now on UFO Twitter and all the rest? Basically like the ATIP program and the Tic Tac video 2017 till now. What do you think about the last 5 years and kind of where do you see it going?
I truly believe that we are in the midst of a disclosure right now, a drip disclosure.
Yeah.
So we're getting these little tidbits of information, and then it goes radio silence for a couple months, and then a little bit more will come out, and somebody else will do an interview with somebody, and a little bit more information will be learned about something. I think right now we're absolutely in a disclosure period, but it's a very slow drip one, and I'm really excited for what's going to be as in the realm of science fact in the next 5 years. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we think now versus what we know then in the next 5 years, because it can be a pretty exciting, a very exciting prospect about what's going to happen and what more information is going to come out, especially when you have these prominent government officials backing these stories up. And when it comes down to it, they have really no reason or justification to want to be lying about this, because it's going to hurt them in the end for them even coming out about it. But I just think it's a really interesting time, very interesting time, and probably the most interesting for this phenomenon to date.
Our guests have been telling us basically the same thing. We interview guys like Sean Cahill and George Knapp, and the more, and Colin Kelleher, a scientist and microbiologist, and the more we talk about it, these were what quote unquote nuts and bolts UFO guys, and they're all now saying, no man, this is like about consciousness and interdimensional type ideas. This is a quantum physics. This is not necessarily just craft. The breadth of phenomenon, even like Skinwalker Ranch and everything associated with that too. He's like, the more we're going down the rabbit hole, the more obscure it's becoming, and we really don't have a grasp of it. Because I asked him too, why doesn't it feel like disclosure? They the government finally admits something that they've never admitted before. They release video. Why are we not jumping up and down the streets? And I totally agree with you. It feels like we're getting it, but we're getting it in little bits. Yeah. And we're also getting it from the same people that told us for the last 70 years, hey, there's nothing here, don't worry about it. So it's kind of hard to just, be a sheep all of a sudden and be like, oh, okay, yeah, now they're leveling with us. I'm still a skeptic at mine, for sure.
Oh, for damn sure. And having being a skeptic is probably the absolute best approach in this field.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to get suckered in or anything like that. And because I got caught, being suckered into cases that were completely false, and I feel ashamed because I'm like, it's just
you want to believe it's true. You really want to be a part of it if it is something legit. You don't want to miss it if it is too, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, even for me, back in, I believe Bob Lazar 100%, and I know some people don't. But just putting yourself out there now, like even on Twitter, which is another thing, Jason, like you are on Twitter now. You're not big on social media usually, but you are on Twitter, which is great. And we'll tell the people where to look that up before we close here. But what do you think about the whole Twitter war and what's taken place? Like, a lot of people have been attacking Lou Elizondo as of late. Lou's been quite quiet on Twitter, and people keep fighting on there under UFO Twitter. So what are your thoughts on what's going on there? Like, why we all fighting each other and calling each other stupid?
That is so fucking true.
It's the world of trolls, man.
Yeah. UFO Twitter it can be quite the cesspool sometimes, but yeah, I love it though. I love it. There's some straight up wackos on there, and the amount of people that fall for these, I don't want to give out names, but there's this one kid on there that he's the son of a bitch, acts like he's some fucking prophet or something like that, and he knows all the answers, and he's telling people you got to open your mind and love one another and this. once you accept this, then they'll start appearing in your home. Like, shut the fuck up, kid. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're 18 years old. Not saying that age has a factor of it, but he just read a couple books and now he's just verbal diarrheaing this shit out. And he's got all these followers about it that are hooked into this type of garbage. I just want people to be able to not take everything they read on UFO Twitter as a fact and look into it for themselves.
Yeah, don't be a sheep. Don't believe everything you read.
Even if it seems like, wow, that's incredible, look into it for yourself. Like, I don't know how many hearts I've had to break and how many bubbles I've had to pop on that thing. But usually once I provide the evidence and show them, then they, we see, But then there's other people that will try to say something and they get flamed right away. They get torched, or even trying to say that something is not a UFO on there or something. It's crazy at times. And it all depends on how you approach people too. Like, it's hard to convey an emotion in however many characters Twitter allows you to type out there. And text is the worst kind of form of communication,
right?
Too, because it could be just misconstrued in so many ways.
How many times do you get in a text fight with your wife or girlfriend and you mean it with a certain inflection in your voice and she takes it as, well, what's that supposed to mean? And then it's like, you have this massive argument that's based on nothing just because there was no sensory
smiley
perception.
Face at the end.
Yeah. You don't know, is it a sarcastic smiley? Now are you poking the bear? You try to make her mad? You could go forever with that.
See, I have a rule. I never fight over the phone. I try, so we'll talk about it later. So I try to limit that because it's true. Like, even I wrote stuff on the internet a few times and it's come back and bit me in the butt. So I'm like, no, I know not to poke the bear or even put anything out there really without having some sort of criticism. And even this podcast, I was talking to Louis, I'm like, even this podcast, so far we haven't had bad criticism. Everybody's been really positive, but it's coming. And that's...
If I name drop or date drop or talk about a fact, you better believe I have it written here and I double check, because some idiot with nothing better to do is going to tell me how stupid I am that it was 1991, not 1990. And I just don't have any patience for that. So I check my shit because I don't want to hear it.
And then, you know what? That is awesome that you do that. And at the same time, it's also awesome that there are people that are willing to look into these things and correct them. Remember when I always said to you, Jason, fill out these reports like you were for a scientist to be looking over them. Have as much detail as you can, leave nothing to their imagination, leave no doubt that you've checked and looked into everything over and over again, because there always is somebody that's going to come by and take a look. And they're going to try to find something, and so you just got to be prepared for stuff like that. But we need those types of people at the same time, because a lot of things get solved that way too, because they're taking the second look, the third look into it. But their approach sometimes of, hey, asshole, you did this wrong, like, it could be a little bit nicer, come across a little better, but yeah.
People are still people at the end of the day. And like you mentioned on a previous show, Jason, that if anybody can call you an idiot or say they don't value your opinion or I don't like your show, but I guess it's good that it's getting out there anyway, right? If you're hitting a nerve, you're probably doing it right. So
that's right. That's fucking right.
You either like it or you don't. That's pretty much the way it is with podcasts, is if you don't like it, don't listen to it. I find it funny when somebody's just trolling all the episodes. It's like, you're still listening. You're still a listener of this podcast. So
I'll send you a t-shirt, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
We get very little, if any, hate mail. It's mainly been all love and
positive.
On our social media pages, people saying like, this is the kind of show more people need to hear. Fact-based, science-minded, skeptical, but open. And let's investigate guys like George Knapp, people who've made a 30-year career out of it, and people that work for the government, and scientists, and people that aren't into fringe stuff. And let's just get, don't leave anything out. Give us everything, and let people make their own decision based on what they're going to believe or not. At the end of the day, they probably got their mind formed 5 minutes in, but if somebody learns a new fact, or it kind of sparks up that interest for them to go out and do some good work, then we're accomplishing our mission.
That's exactly right.
And Jason, before we close here, do you have any book recommendation for somebody who wants to be an investigator? Anything that for you has been an important, not just a book when you were a kid in the library, but like a book for investigators? You once made a suggestion to me, and I was wondering if you can make the same suggestion to the listeners.
Yeah. What the heck was that book now? Damn it. It's a very good book. And
we just don't know the title.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it now. Damn it.
Okay, it's okay. It's
well,
okay.
I got a book, and I can put it in the comment section or something afterwards, but the Canadian UFO report by Chris Rutkowski is a really good place for people to start. There's a lot of classic cases in that book that people should take a look at. It's who was it by? Chris Rutkowski and Jeff Dittman.
Okay.
Yeah, the Canadian UFO report, the best cases revealed, something along those lines, and that has a lot of Canadian history cases in it with some explanations in it as well, and it covers a very broad spectrum from basically from the 40s till most recently, like in the 2000s, I think it was.
Right. Now, Canada needs a Lou Elizondo, and I think I'd vote for you to become, a candidate for that at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because we recently we've had a politician, I think it's Larry Maguire, that's been pushing for. Did I get that right, or I'm saying
That's right? Yeah.
Mixing Jerry Maguire with Larry Maguire, but he's come out and he said, he would like to know more about Canadian events with UFOs near our nuclear facilities and near our military facilities as well. Which I thought, oh, that's great momentum, and then it just went silent. And I don't know if he's gotten, some people say, hey, maybe lay off the UAP stuff. But
Yeah,
the States is sort of, they're priming themselves up right now for disclosure. And Canada just seems so quiet.
Idle.
Yeah, idle and quiet. So we need a Lou Elizondo in Canada for sure.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do.
Jason, where can people find you online?
So you could reach me on Twitter at UAP Bay. That's UAP BAY. Or you could drop me an email at tbaymufon@outlook.com.
Perfect. Louis, you have any final questions for our guest today?
I just want to thank you very much for coming on our show. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. You represented Mufon and particularly Canada really, really well. So we're proud to have some good minds, not only on the show, but just in our collective. And as being Canadians, we're just as into this as the Americans or the British or Australians. And this is not it's not a phenomenon that has boundaries or borders, and it's good for people to keep that momentum going. If they're in Germany doing this, go hard. If you're in Canada, the US, keep going, keep consuming the media. Let's get more and more intelligent people hooked on this. We have people all the time tell us that they're now into this because of the show. We put it in digestible little snippets that everybody can take something from. So thanks for being a part of that. Yeah. And glad to have you on the show.
Thanks very much for having me again. And we'll do it again sometime.
Yo, you got it. Thanks, Jay.
Right on. Have a great one, guys. And before we go, the Canadian UFO Survey 2021. If you're interested in this shit, take a look at it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jay. We'll have you back on again, okay?
Take care, guys.
Are you paying attention?